Hey, Keith, I have a question for you.
Sure. And good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, hey, sorry. I didn't know if people are still here. Um, I'm curious, have you done much with the ACH and FedWire research, being able to claim like the benefits of the different trusts?
It's authentication. That's what the authentication is. It's verifying that the person that the account was opened up in is the same person that's authenticating the record.
That's it?
Yep, it's proving the official record.
Oh, okay.
But in that proof of the official record, what you're in fact doing, as we're talking about in lawful living, is proving that there was no oath placed. So therefore, the official record is actually in error, has been operating in error, as I am truly the indispensable party in interest, in greater, superior, prior, private capacity as opposed to the United States, who is the indispensable party on the contract terms. That's the person side that was constructed. Like Malika says, it wasn't my person. I didn't make it. The United States actually made it, but it was done under a grant. And that's that informant at the hospital. That was a grant. She didn't sign as a signatory to the contract. She signed as the informant, which means it was an autograph granting information, the details, the data elements that were in formation of contract for the other two signatories.
Yeah, and basically handing over the estate that way with the corruption of blood. Yeah.
And tonight, we're going to talk about that because it is an acquisition. We were speaking about this earlier. And I did plan on going over escrow accounts tonight, but because I ended up doing some research, I wanted to point this out. So here's what we're looking at. And again, please let me know if anybody thinks I'm wrong in this, but this seems pretty succinct and simple language to me. But right here we have Title 48 of the Federal Acquisition Regulation System. And then Chapter 12 in that title includes the Department of Transportation, which is the next title of the code. So the acquisition regulation itself includes the Department of Transportation, which is regulated under the entire Title 49 code. So the entire 49 code is implicated as part of this acquisitional contract. When we look at general, Federal Acquisition Regulation System, which includes the Department of Transportation, definitions of words and terms. And what I want to point out here is when we look at this, we see definitions and internet links, and then we've got public law, 5 U.S. Code 301, 41 U.S.C. 418B, and 48 CFR 1.3 point. When we click on this, it's not found. When we click on this, it's not found. When we click on this, we see departmental regulations. So all federal acquisitions are departmental regulations, and the Transportation Department is part of that departmental regulation for federal acquisitions. We see public law, it takes you to the Rio link. So these ones you have to actually put in and copy paste. Oops, that's the wrong one. Title 41, and we're going to see if it goes 418B. Look, they dismissed an entire section from 153 to 1101. So it's not, it's just completely gone. So when they say the authority comes from such and such, where? Right here. Comes from public law and departmental regulations. An act making consolidated appropriations for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2014. Consolidated Appropriations Act. Appropriations is acquisitions. Acquisitions are collections. They're all synonymous. They have to first collect and acquisition them to then be able to appropriate them. Period. So when we look at definitions, it tells us agency, federal agency, or executive agency means the Department of Transportation. This is in federal acquisitions regulations. And it says the agency, federal agency or executive agency, means the Department of Transportation. In the Department of Transportation, Title 49 of the U.S. Code, it defines commerce as transportation, trade, or traffic. In the Title 26, for federal income tax purposes, it defines motor vehicle operators lease. And in that, we see that we have to have an oath of office which specifically allows us to perform the functions of public office, which are federal acquisitions, and they are appropriated through the Department of Transportation. Transport. Every port that's out there. But they have to come from the chief port. Chief Information Officer. Does that sound like data elements? Or is it the hospital doctor that got the information? Is he the chief exporter of the information from the hospital to the county registrar? It means the director of the office of the chief information, chief of the contracting office. Again, they're the ones performing the contract by signature. Contracting activity includes contracting offices within an operating administration and is the same as the term procuring activity. Operating administration. Okay, watch this. Federal Aviation Administration is what operates the federal aviation. Federal Highway Administration is the same. This administration is what operates the federal highways. This administration operates the federal motor carrier safety. This one here operates the Federal Transit Administration. Remember, and this is what I'm telling people about the freedom of transit. Through the Constitution of the United States, they are bound through these contracts. Federal Acquisitions Regulations 52.212-5 says contract terms and conditions required to implement statutes or executive orders - commercial items. So whenever they're seeking commercial items, they have to have it. It has to be done by contract. By using Federal Transit Administration and asserting constitutional authority, they also seek constitutional universal postal union, which is operated through the Postal Service, and the organic provisions. The very first thing they talk about, Chapter 1, General. Oops. Okay, let's do it again. I don't know how I got rid of that. But the very first one, general provision, says scope and objectives of the union. And that's the only place that it mentions transit. And it says, for the purposes of the acts of the Universal Postal Union, the following terms shall have the meanings defined below. Postal Service, all postal services whose scope is determined by the bodies of the union. That's the Postal Service. And this is the scope. Scope and objectives of the union. The countries adopting this constitution shall comprise under the title of the Universal Postal Union a single postal territory for the reciprocal exchange of letter post items, not mail, not commercial items, letter post items. Freedom of transit shall be guaranteed throughout the entire territory of the union. This is why we have to create that union. We have to quit filing lawsuits and calling discrepancy controversy. We have to clarify that they're wrong. They're wrong. We're right. That's all there is to it. Has nothing to do with commerce and their seeking of commercial elements. Has nothing to do with contract. As it says, the scope and objectives of the union, not the contract, the union, the agreement, is that countries adopting this constitution shall comprise. What's a prize, folks? Is that a award? Under the title of the Universal Postal Union, a single postal territory for the reciprocal exchange. Psalms 121, verse 8. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. That is what this freedom of transit is subject to. That is what this title is under. And the freedom of transit is under the title Universal Postal Union, which I have just clarified is under what is written is what ought be done. And it is written, the Lord shall preserve thy going out, thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. I don't know what your commercial cost is. I don't know what your numbering system is. I don't know what your harmonized tax is. But as far as I'm concerned, it's already harmonized because what is freely given is to be given freely. Everything that is made by God. Therefore, he gave it to me and I'm supposed to give it freely, whether it's going or coming in. It's union. The aim of the union shall be to secure the organization and improvement of the postal services and to promote in this sphere the development of international collaboration and not just collaboration with your local government. You know, that little pissant municipality that claims they have so much jurisdiction. I'm sorry, they already agreed to a union whereby they are free in freedom of transit shall be guaranteed throughout the entire territory of the union. If they are using a zip code, they are part of the union. If you are using a zip code, you too are part of the union. You do not have to be public or private. You do not have to assert you are not part of the union or that you are part of the union. It is already known. Freedom of transit shall be guaranteed through the entire territory of the union. That doesn't apply to just me or them. It covers everything and everybody that was made. There is no clarification that it only applies to persons or to merchant contracts or to private contracts or simple contracts or trust. It says freedom of transit shall be guaranteed through the entire territory of the union. And when we think of freedom of transit, can I convey a thought from here to you? Is that not a transit of thought? Can they charge the transit of that thought? Impossible. So we place that superior thought before them. Again, Psalms 121, verse 8. And of course, support it with Leviticus 25, verses 23 and 24, where it speaks about the land shall not be sold forever, for it is mine, and ye are strangers and sojourners with me, which is freedom of transit by him, with him, and he's the one that guarantees our coming and going. And in the land of all of your possessions, ye shall grant redemption. It's the land we are supposed to redeem because we are already redeemed. Fear not, for I have redeemed thee. I have called thee by name. You are mine. You belong to the house of Jacob with the surname Israel. As it is written, so shall it be. They can't beat it. The union shall take part as far as possible in postal technical assistance sought by its member countries. So what's this law of nations? Where is the definition of countries? Are we not the ones that define our territory? And that is what a country is. It's a commercial characteristic of the person in a standing as a larger body than just one single one USC one. The singular refers to the plural or includes the plural, and the plural includes the singular. This is what we have to clarify. And I urge people to read the Calvo doctrine. This speaks greatly on being able to assert your singular jurisdiction as plenipotentiary power as just as powerful as any government can claim as their plenipotentiary power, period. You have the exact same power despite the size of the armed forces, because you are in fact operating in a peace agreement which doesn't need armed forces, because the armed forces of the other armed countries, according to the agreement, have a responsibility to one another and to God. As the ones carrying arms to protect those that are not armed. And this is a superior element. And if it is violated in any sense, particularly by an officer, it is a grave offense. Again, in the laws of nation and the Libra Code tells us that. And that's all we're clarifying through our peace treaties. So let's go on to the next one, Title 49, Transportation, where it includes the entire portion. And it says transportation. Office of the Secretary of Transportation, organization and delegation of powers and duties. Those are the plenipotentiary powers that I just told you. And if you have the same powers, you don't delegate them to them. They are already delegated in equal station. Again, uniform, union, equal, mutual agreement. We have the same powers. And that's all we're doing. Other regulations relating to transportation: Pipeline Hazardous Materials Administration, Department of Transportation. Everything in their Department of Transportation, along the highways and byways and everything, are people that are not postal service workers that have to have specific regulations that the Postal Service itself follows in regards to hazardous materials. That's their primary concern. And they are postal roads. And they have substantial backing for their liability on those postal roads through the Postal Realty Trust, Inc., which is registered with the Securities Exchange Commission. This is what backs the U.S. Postal money orders. It is also what backs their operation on the roadways, which is why they are not required to have a license plate, which is synonymous with a credit card. That identification, that's synonymous with the credit card. A credit card is synonymous with a license plate. A license plate is synonymous with a stamp. It's the derivative of the actual creditor. It's the pipeline. It's the chain of title. They have a pipeline, a chain of title, and they have a duty and responsibility under that security agreement already in place. So let's go to the next one. For Title 48, Federal Acquisition Regulation System, Department of Commerce. Again, it's all, this is Chapter 13 instead of Chapter 12, where it brings in Title 49, Transportation. Now they're going to bring in Chapter 13, Department of Commerce. So now we're talking about Title 15, Commerce and Trade. Subchapter H, Clauses and Forms, Solicitation Provisions and Contract clauses, Text of Provisions and Clauses, Discharge of Liens. Every time they do a federal acquisition, there's a lien, a commercial lien. Commercial lien, and this is the same as that traffic citation. It's a commercial lien. Got it? I want everybody to pay attention to the wording here. the contractor, which means there's two parties. There has to be a minimum of two people taking place here. Okay. So both parties are contractors. If they're both giving creditable information, they're both creditors. If they're both creditors, they are both debtors. Again, you're playing both. You either are partaking or you're not, but either way, it is a beneficial right already there. Psalms 121, verse 8, it is already there. Shall immediately discharge or cause to be discharged any lien or right in rem, in the person, in remembrance of the person, something past, not the present, not the now time, of any kind other than in favor of the government. This is why we include the interest of the United States, which at any time exists or arises in connection with work done or materials furnished under the contract. Mom was an informant, and the material she gave was maternal data elements relative to what she gave birth to in both the physical world, which was the living being that was born, and the information that was granted through that transaction that caused paperwork to be given and received as a receipt. Article 38 of the Libre Code, private property, unless forfeited by crimes or by offense of the owner. Mom granted the information. It wasn't lost by crimes or offense of the owner. Can be seized only by way of military necessity for the support or other benefit of the Army or the United States. If the owner has not fled, the commanding officer will cause receipts to be given, which may serve the spoliated owner to obtain indemnity. (50 USC 4305). Title 50 of the U.S. Code is war and national defense. So it is military operations, suspension of provisions relating to ally of enemy, regulation of transactions in foreign exchange of gold or silver, property transfers, vested interests, enforcement and penalties. Any payment. Did mom pay for the services? Or did the insurance pay for the services? In, on, and for the record, there is record of payment no matter who it came from. It doesn't say where it came from. It says any payment. It was paid already. Conveyance, transfer, assignment, or delivery of property or interest therein. I have an interest as the beneficiary. The United States has an, I am named beneficiary. I am indispensable. I am named. The United States, by operation, is a indispensable party to the transaction that is not named in the transaction. Therefore, we name them in the transaction by reconveying the interest back to them, made to or for the account of the United States, or as otherwise directed. It has not been directed to the United States, so we direct it to the United States. When they give us this document, we give it back to them with the direction that their obligation in the contract that they already previously, or debt they already previously contracted, it is their obligation to include the interest of the United States in the transaction that they are operating in, because they can only get their funding from the United States. Pursuant to this subdivision, or any rule, regulation, instruction, or direction issued hereunder, shall to the extent thereof be full acquittance and discharge for all purposes of the obligation of the person making the same, The United States is the obligation, and now we are taking upon our right and acting under our obligation to give notice. The notice is the proper assignment back to the United States, the diplomatic service or channel of service of notice, making the same, and no person shall be held liable. That's the forgiveness. It's saying, okay, the books are settled. It's here done by the direction. It's settled. And now no one is held liable. There is no longer a dispute. It is settled. This is settling the record. We now have access to settle the land by reclamation and redemption. This is the redress. First Amendment, Congress shall make no law establishing or respecting the establishment of religion. And we have our right to redress the government. We have that right. That's what we're doing here. We're redressing by giving it the proper address. It's already there. The next one, and this is why I want you to pay attention to the term, because this is the next one. It's another part of the Title 48 federal acquisitions talking of discharge of liens, and it just simply says the same thing in different way. It says the contractor shall immediately discharge or cause to be discharged. One of us has that obligation. So we step up and take that obligation. Now the other contractor is the superior party in the contract, which is indispensable and unnamed. And now we name them in the interest of the United States in reducing that debt. Hereby we release the obligation in rem of any kind. Period. And it's saying the same thing, immediately discharged. And real quick, I'm going to go over clauses, and I'll post all these links. This is going to talk about the different clauses. And when you click on these, it's going to delivering and shifting a vessel. Liability and insurance. Mom delivered and shifted the vessel when she was operated as or acted as informant. And it created a subcontract and insurance and liabilities. And then the next one talks about lay days and who lays and collects all duties and taxes. Congress. How many days do they have to do so? 3. Let's get her done, as a redneck would say. And with that, I yield. I'm going to post the rest of these links because they talk about applicability of certain laws to contracts for the acquisition of commercial on-the-shelf items, application definitions, and we talk about application definitions because back here, when we talk about the authority, it talks about 5 U.S.C. 301 departmental regulations. So now we're going to talk about application because it applies to them because they're the ones using it, period. And with that, I yield, and I'll leave the rest of the 5 and 45 seconds left. Board's open, folks. See, we have to place our obligation in these contracts.
Are we almost there, brother?
Almost.
So let me ask you, what would that look like, Keith, in a sense when you said when we got to redress government? So is it a particular address that we utilize for the District of Columbia? And then do we put the bill in our name or their name, or what do that look like?
I'm going to show you a real simple one, and Lori's going to like this because we love our brother Lex Mercatoria. He put together a simple statement, and it says, you can put the name on the case, the name on the bill. This would be like the utility company, the cable company, and then the statement number. They're always going to give you some kind of account statement number or account number. And you put memorandum of obligations. And it says, by these presents, I hereby exercise right of subrogation by surrendering. You're coming to peace. You're letting them know, again, it's a peace statement. And we're going to mention that 50 USC 4305 B2. And like I said, it's release of all liability in all courts. That too is that it's that peace treaty. It's a simple peace treaty, simple contract term peace treaty. To you, my estate in the above described matter, material, maternal, issue, in usufruct with any interest in reversion assigned. And this is why we've got this is a qualification. This is a qualifying phrase. And we have to place it there because it's not there. This is what qualifies the signature. In reversion assigned to the Treasury of the United States, thereby declaring their interest to and for the account of the United States, for you to convey to the United States via the enclosed assignment transfer order in exchange for full acquittance and discharge from active duty. I'm not the duty agent. I'm not supposed to lay and collect the taxes and duties. That's a forfeiture and seizure process. I'm not involved in it. I'm the end user of what was been acquisitioned already. Through forensic accounting for all purposes of the obligation of the person making the same, pursuant to Section 7, Trading with the Enemy Act, 40 Stat 411, which is 50 USC 4305 B2. And like I just showed you, it's all acquisitions. And what you're going to do is you're going to give them that, assign it back to them in reversion. They're going to maintain the commercial liability now, which is now released because now the lien has been released. Everybody agrees, mine. And that's all it is.
You just answered the question I was going to ask.
2 minutes left.
Cool, man.
Well, that's kind of what they did in the beginning, right? They went together, the 55 families, and pledged all of pretty much their heirs and their assigns and all their property for a more perfect union. They pulled it all together.
Yeah, and when somebody questioned they weren't too sure about my estate, and that's why we put in the above matters. It doesn't extend beyond those matters. That's why it's going to be a one thing at a time. You're going to have to do with the phone company, the cable company, the landlord. You're going to have to correct all of this stuff one at a time.
What
Don't you think it's possible just to appoint someone as the, as the beneficiary? Isn't there one trustee that should be taking care of all of these accounts?
Well, that's why I post the postmaster.
Yeah, I know some people
that way when we do come across these, we've already got a postmaster working with us that can say, yeah, this guy's not a babbling idiot. And we're not dealing with administrative courts. We're dealing with somebody that has judicial knowledge.
Yeah, I know someone who sends their bills to the Secretary of State because they made the deposit there doing like a trust doing a UCC.
Yep.
And then I know someone else who's done it with the post office, who then their bills are paid. I think it's,
it's just a matter of knowing that there's an assignment made and somebody's already in position. You can no longer pose it against me.
I'm the beneficiary. They're the trustee.
Discharging debts through the UPU.
Yep.
Right.
Freedom of transit.
That's what you're doing.
Yeah, I already adopted the Constitution of the UPU, and that asserts that freedom of transit. I put a special little note in there that I adopted it, and it's